That will help with some of our other shortfalls, I guess. Yes. We got a couple holes, don't we?
We do.
And
Starting to plug them, though.
as with every other year, once we get the year closed out, because there are still some bills that come through in January that get attributed back to 2019. Once that's done, we'll prepare a report for council so you can look at where you actually ended the year before you get into supplemental appropriations for 2020.
The only other thing that I was noticing is item K, where we've got the request for a handicap parking spot in front of that house, and I certainly don't have a problem with it at all. I understand completely. I see this as a hardship, but I was surprised that it was part of the consent agenda. Is that just because it was something that we thought we'd all?
Yeah, we didn't, you know, if you want to discuss it, we figured you'd pull it out and ask for it to be discussed
I mean, I don't
separately.
have a problem with it. I
it-
didn't know if that was something that usually the traffic commission would talk
They
about.
do understand that it is a public parking spot. It is not dedicated to their house. So,
Okay.
I mean, you could have people from First Lutheran Church or anywhere else in the neighborhood use that parking spot
I
as well,
see.
so,
Okay, that's,
So will we post it and paint it?
yes.
Okay.
There'll be it'll be signed and painted blue, I guess, or is that the color?
I believe blue is the,
Yeah, obviously the painting won't occur till summer, but it will be signed unless you don't want it to stick.
so the only time that they would be able to use it would be if someone else isn't parking there.
Correct,
correct.
Yeah, that's it.
correct. And they are aware of that. I believe they talked to you, Mr. McCarty.
Yeah. So as long as some, I mean, the church use it for handicap or anything you can. I guess the daughters will really handicap.
Like I said, I certainly don't have a problem with it, and didn't look like anyone else did, but I guess I was just surprised that it wasn't something that we pulled out. But I think it's a valid request, and I'd like to see us do it.
The reason why we did schedule it under consent is because staff didn't, Public Works, when they looked at the request in traffic, they didn't have any issues with it being located there. So we just put it under consent, knowing council would pull it out if they wanted to discuss it.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Barrington, second by Mr. Rice. Further discussion? Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to address any of these items? Roll call, please.
Rice.
Aye.
Dosher. McCardle.
Aye.
Barrington.
Aye.
Sharks.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Sabers.
Motion carries. Citizens' input. If you need to address the mayor and members of the city council on an item that was not on the agenda, excluding personnel items, please come forward to the podium. State your name and your concern. Presentations are limited to 3 minutes. Items will be considered, but no action will be taken this time. One thing we'd like to discuss, Mr. Roth, would you like to come up and have a brief talk about the recycling bins?
Where would you like to start?
Well, apparently there's a there's a little concern the lids aren't going down.
Have they all been delivered yet?
No, they're still in the
Right.
process of delivering.
And how long will that take?
They're hoping to be done before Christmas next week.
Okay.
Um,
So
They're moving pretty good. There's been a few damaged containers in the process, and they're going to be replaced, and they're going to be warranted by the company. This type of weather, it happens. The lids, as far as the lids not closing, that's a real minor issue. That's not a defect. That is something that they just take a little heat, either in the garage or from the sun, and they'll form right back down. We have that problem with all the compost and garbage containers we get in, even in summertime when we get them in. It's just the way they're all stacked amongst each other. Lids are all laying open as they're stacked, and it's just, they were shipped in warm weather and they arrived here in cold weather, and that's just kind of the way they formed right now until they get a little bit of heat. We've picked up some today, and just with the sun being on them today, they're all just sitting flat. All the lids have laid right down. So there's no defect in them or nothing like that.
I've been asked you if there's if they don't want a bin and they still want to recycle, there's going to be an alternative place to drop the recycling out there.
Yeah, we're planning on, this year, we're planning on having a couple dumpsters out at the old landfill recycle plant, transfer station. And there might even be another alternative spot that we're looking at. I'm not real sure where that might be yet exactly, but we're looking at a few locations, one for sure, other than the transfer station location. So yeah, if people don't want a bin, we'll come and pick them up. We've been doing that today already. They're free to stop out at the drop-off station and unload their recyclables at that area if they would like.
I also saw a notice that came out that the dependable recycle bins can be kept at the
Yes.
end of their duty cycle, and if they're damaged or whatever, they could be just put in the new recycle bins.
Yes, I spoke with Mike Erickson, the owner of the company, and he's going to eat the cost of the container, so to speak. He doesn't feel that they're going to have enough staff and stuff to appropriately collect them all. So he's willing to let the residents keep their container if they want. If they're damaged, cracked, or not usable, they're free to put them in their new recycle container, and then we'll kind of pre-sort those out as they hit the transfer station. And Millennium will take all those containers that are broken or damaged, so they won't be going to the new landfill.
Kevin, refresh our memory as to, because we're getting recycling picked up every other week, starting the first full week, how do we know if mine is the first week or the second week?
We're going to be putting out a schedule. We got some more literature and stuff that's going to be putting out. We're still waiting for a local company here to finish our, we got magnets you can place on your refrigerators. We got some stickers that if you wish, you can put on your containers to kind of itemize what you can and can't put in there. In response to John's question here, yeah, the first full, I was just trying to picture that schedule in my head. We'll put the schedule on the cityofmitchell.org website. Is that something we can put on their printable?
Yeah, we can do that. And I just have it pulled up here.
Okay, yeah, I was just trying to figure out if we could maybe put that on there in a printable format PDF or something that they can print it out. But starting January 6th and 7th, which is the first full week of January, that's Monday and Tuesday's collection. The recyclables will be picked up same day as your collection. So the first week, Monday's garbage goes out along with the recyclables. Tuesday, their garbage goes out along with their recyclables. And then that'll leave us Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then the following Monday, Tuesday, do some sorting and trucking. And then the next week, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays will be their recyclables. And it'll just switch. So like the 6th, which is Monday, it'll be every other week for the Monday garbage from there on out, along with the Tuesdays. The following week, it'll be Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday's recyclables on their garbage day, and then it'll be every other week for them. And we'll get that on a PDF format, I believe, and try to make that a printable, so people can print that out.
So right now, it's every 2 weeks you'll be picked up with
Yep.
recycling.
Yep.
Is that something that possibly, is this what you were talking about as far as notifications? We got other notifications that are coming out. Can we possibly utilize that system?
Yep, we can put it on there, so anyone who's subscribed to the updates, if we do that as a news flash, they'll get this notification when it's posted online.
And all the recyclable collections will follow the garbage schedule. So if there's a holiday in there and it shifts your garbage schedule, I think it only fell where there's actually one holiday that the city does not work, garbage collection. And so that's a shift back, so they're collecting garbage Tuesday through Saturday. So it only affects that Monday and Tuesday's garbage and recyclables, so it'll be Tuesday and Wednesday of that week. But I think that was only one holiday. Most of the other holidays were half holidays where we work till noon and we just doubled the staff and we have everyone in there and out of there by noon as far as city staff.
Anything else? Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Johnson, you want to give us a little update on Main Street?
This must be Public Works at the podium night, huh?
Let's hope we don't have too many of those.
All right, Terry Johnson with Public Works. Wanted to just fill you guys in on the demo on the 100 block of North Main Street. Contractors started on the McPeak Pawn Shop demo today. They started cutting the roof back so it's not joined to the other building. And then we got to do some hand removal of the wall in the back. So we moved the closure of Main Street that was going to be tomorrow. We moved that back a day just because it's going a little slower than what the contractor thought. And basically, we'll start on Wednesday at noon. Contractor will try to get the building down and road back open as soon as they can. The city is basically just involved with coordination through this project, just to try to coordinate safety and some other things. And we're basically just putting a protective fence that would be adjacent from the demo area that would go the entire width of Main Street up to the sidewalk on the other side. All businesses will be open. And the sidewalk will be open to all those businesses that are not affected by the demo. The businesses that are affected will be enclosed, which would be just the pawn shop building and the insurance place.
Can you tell us about signage that you put up?
Yeah, the signage that we will be putting up will be road closed to through traffic on both ends, so people could still go through Main Street and go up to the fence, as you see on the drawing that Stephanie pulled up. So you could still, you could still drive going up Main Street on both ends and then turn around at the fence, then go back out. There is a public parking lot there at the corner of 2nd and Main that is still going to be open. People just can park there or on the side streets and walk down the sidewalk. The entire sidewalk on the east side will be open throughout the entire demo of the project. The sidewalk on the west side will be open up to the fence. And then on the south side of the demo area, we just want to protect the public as much as we can and have a safe place for the contractor and the public to be around.
And they will place detour signs, as you see right there.
Yeah, going around each block.
Were the businesses informed that it was going to start today instead of tomorrow?
We, the contractor, we just found out this afternoon. But
is closed.
the road closure,
I think they were under the impression that it would be closed Tuesday to Thursday if all went well. I don't think that the businesses knew that it would be closed today.
It's not closed.
It's not closed
It's
today.
not even going to close tomorrow. It's not going to close till Wednesday now.
Oh, okay.
So, and we told the contractor to go around to all the businesses and let the businesses know that we were going to start the closure on Tuesday. And all the businesses that were in their building, they were all talked to. If the businesses were closed, then they got a notice put on their door by the contractor.
Do you know what time of day he went?
I
Yeah.
don't. We just requested the contractor do it. I confirmed with the contractor, and he either dropped off notices or talked to people. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to address council? Okay, anything else?
I just want to mention, I had requested that the last meeting that we have the one-way streets on for this week, and that got moved to the next meeting. I just want to make sure people were aware of that,
Right.
in case anybody is wondering or looking why there wasn't any discussion at tonight's meeting about that. So we will talk about it on the 6th of January, and I know the city wanted to have all of the appropriate people here. So.
Correct, Mr. Croce's gone on vacation, so it will be the 6th of January. We will also have a discussion on tipping fees at that time with Mr. Croce as well. Okay? Okay, anything else?
Joe Schrader, city engineer, sitting in for Kyle Croce. Just want everyone to know that we were contacted this weekend that BY Water District needs to fix a water main leak near Ethan, which means our transmission line into town will be out of service for a day or two while they complete repairs. So we're just asking that the city of Mitchell conserves water if possible. Thank you.
Pardon me? That starts tomorrow. Or, you're right, the repairs start tomorrow at 8 a.m. And then, they think it'll only take a day, but the water towers are all full, and we have capacity for 2 days, don't we? Plus or minus? So,
2 to 3, yep.
no, it should not be interrupted, but then again, in a perfect world, That's why we're asking you kind of conserve water in the next few days, so we make sure we don't run into an issue, so, okay? You would.
And just like with previous repairs too, we will notify the public when that's been corrected. So if it gets done early, we'll let everyone know too.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. FEMA disaster recovery update. We're fortunate enough to have the FEMA group here to discuss with us the DRC that's been set up out at the 4-H grounds. Who wants to start this discussion?
Good evening. My name is George Betts, and I'm a senior program management, emergency management program specialist with FEMA Region 8. Our report is that in Mitchell, we've had 259 total registrations, and we have put on the street $733,996 to the citizens of Mitchell. We have our DRC open, and if anybody would like some extra flyers, I have one. It's open. I was down there most of the day today. They've seen a total of 47 people have come in. Today was a busy day. They had 16 people come in, just, different families and stuff. This is going on. I want to talk a little bit about IA, what IA does. There's a couple of programs in individual assistance. That's what IA stands for, by the way. And I'll try not to use any acronyms, but I'm a Fed, so I can only speak in acronyms. But in the IHP program, which is the Individuals and Households program, is the two things that FEMA is really known for. One is rental assistance and repairs to home. That's under housing. And then we also have other needs assistance. And other needs assistance is income dependent. When somebody registers, they're asked what the household income is. If you hear anybody that they put put zero down, they say, oh, if I put zero down, I won't get a SBA packet. No, as soon as you put zero down, because we know nowhere in America does somebody have zero income. There has to be some income either in annuities or whatever, there's some kind of income. Other needs are things that take care of like property and things like that. Things that are not income dependent for ONA are things like medical, dental, funeral costs, childcare. Those type of things doesn't meet that, to that. There's a couple other programs we have that's been, the state has requested and we were activated. One is disaster unemployment, which is a program for people who would not be eligible for regular unemployment. And that goes through the state workforce development agency. We also have crisis counseling going on, and we also have, so we have a lot of programs that's going on, a lot of different things that are affecting your community. So thank you for the opportunity. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Can you tell me, oh, sorry.
One thing you want to be aware of is if you fill out a FEMA form, you could get a small business administration packet in the
Correct.
mail. And if you throw that away thinking you're not a business, you got to go back and readdress that because that packet is tied to being able to get FEMA assistance.
Mr. Mayor, we have SBA here, and
Yep, okay.
right after I get done answering questions, and
Perfect.
she'll give her story.
Can you tell us that number one more time of how much has been?
Okay, we have a total of 259 applications for a total, which is IHP, which means it's both ONA and housing, 733,996. So if we had $4 more, it'd be $734,000.
Thank you.
Did we have any damage to report in the city? I know obviously county, we had numerous roads and culverts and so forth, but did we have any that we reported in the
Yes,
city?
that has been reported, and the deadline for public assistance is coming up. Yeah,
Yeah.
Wednesday, I think, correct? Or tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Yeah, so,
And that's a whole nother program that's under public assistance, and I wouldn't even want to start. I have a hard enough time keeping track of IA stuff, so.
But what is the deadline again for the individual assistance?
January 17th.
1 month later.
So encourage everybody to register that you see. You're absolutely correct, Mr. Mayor, about the SBA packet. If they receive one, they don't necessarily have to take one, but that could end their ability to receive any more funding for that. I'm sure the SBA person will talk about it, but SBA is truly the way to the road to recovery. What we do is in grants is we put a Band-Aid on so you can live in your house. That's all we do. We don't restore you back to what you were pre-disaster conditions. So the Stafford Act, when it was written, it wasn't written that way to do that. But SBA is truly the road to recovery, so.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Well, I guess it's my turn now. My name is Louise Porter, and I'm a public affairs specialist with the U.S. Small Business Administration. And during declared disasters, the Small Business Administration provides low interest rate loans to homeowners, renters, as well as businesses of all sizes. So in this regard, in this case, during this presidentially declared disaster, because the SBA also does agency where FEMA is not involved. But right now, when FEMA is involved and people call and register with FEMA, based on their responses, they may be referred over to the Small Business Administration. And like George was saying, that's based on the income guidelines. So if you're over the income guideline, or if you indicate that you have a small business or a farm or a ranch or 20% or more of a corporation, anything that will make your taxes a little bit more complicated, you will receive the Small Business Administration application. And what I've been noticing here in South Dakota is that the majority of people are receiving that application. So every county is different, but it's been about 80% that I've been noticing. So we have a couple different programs for homeowners and renters, people that have had damage to their personal property and or their real estate. If they complete an application and they are approved, and it can be as low as 1.75%, if they are approved, a loan becomes an option. They are not required to accept it. They'll have some time to make that decision, and even after, if they decline the loan, they'll still have 6 months if they'd like to request a reinstatement. So there is some time to make that determination. If they are declined, and the reason the majority of people are declined is lack of repayment ability, as in they can't afford a loan, or credit history. Terrible credit. So those people tend to know that they are maybe on the edge that way, and sometimes people don't apply because they feel like, why would I bother? I'm just going to get declined. But if somebody is declined, most people are referred back to FEMA for their other needs assistance program that George was talking about. So sometimes people register with FEMA and they get the application and they realize that it is for long-term recovery. And as George was saying, the SBA is the number one provider of the majority of resource for long-term recovery, for complete rebuilding. The homeowners are eligible for up to $200,000 for real estate, and it can go as high as $40,000 for personal property. So even if someone didn't own any real estate, but they had damage to their things, even vehicles or appliances or things like that, or even if they had things in a storage unit, something like that where their property was damaged, they could still be eligible. And that can go as high as $40,000 for personal property. So we always encourage everyone to complete the application. A lot of times, I'm going to pause that thought for 1 second, because we also have a business program. And for businesses, It's for physical damage to business interests. And we also have an economic injury program. That's for businesses that are experiencing a downturn. It's to help them keep their lights on, to help them pay their necessary operating expenses until things get back to normal. The deadline for economic injury isn't set until August 18th of 2020. The deadline for physical damage, if you actually had some physical damage, as George was saying, is January 17th, and that's for homeowners as well as businesses. So for businesses, there is no referral over to a grant program for FEMA because there are no federal grants for businesses. But we still encourage people to complete the application, and the thought that I paused was farmers are not eligible for their agriculture, for the livestock, for the crops, for the land. That it goes through the USDA, and we encourage them to connect with them. From the USDA people that I've talked to, they have been connecting with them. They've been rather busy. Farmers' primary residences are eligible. So if a farmer had a home then that was damaged, then that could be eligible through this program. Also, access roads to the primary residence. So farmers or otherwise, if somebody has had damage to their access road, that's also something that could go through this program. So we always encourage people to visit the Recovery Center, complete an application. We do have a customer service center number. If you Google Small Business Administration, SBA, Disaster Assistance Customer Service Center, it will tell you the phone number is 1-800-659-2955. People are welcome to call that number because sometimes we realize that people cannot visit the Recovery Center for whatever reason. Maybe it doesn't work for them. You can make the application online. You can complete it online. You cannot complete it over the phone, but if you need some assistance or you have some questions or you just need someone to talk you through it or talk you off the ledge if it gets really kind of harrowing, because we really want to encourage people to complete the application and not take a month of Sundays getting it down to the closest nickel. An estimation is fine. They realize that. There's a final page. You can say, I estimated this. We just want people to get an application in so they can receive a determination. All right, I think I've said it all. Any questions?
Yeah, is this in writing anywhere? We were just saying this is really good information
Sure.
for the public to have. Is this something that,
You know, I have a fact sheet, and I'd be more than happy to give you a bunch of these, and I can even email it to you so it's digital. The program's kind of complex, so it has,
Right,
it has a
right.
ton of words on it. I have one that's a little bit, has less words on it. I can give that one to you too. So, yeah, the real message is we want people to know that decline is not the end of the road, that they may get that referral over. So not to just wait around to see what happens, to actually complete all the paperwork. But yes, I can get that to you.
The other thing we want to make sure people understand is if you get the packet from SBA, don't throw it away thinking I'm not a business, I don't need a loan. It's part of the paperwork that has to go in so that they can refer, if you don't qualify for a loan, they can refer you back to FEMA for grant money and whatnot. So I learned a lot in this whole process just talking to these guys, so it's been very helpful.
Yeah, you know, from a policy standpoint, like I always have hesitant to say somebody has to complete the application because from a policy standpoint, nobody has to. I mean, you don't have to. But if it were my family, if it were my family that was damaged, my mother, I would say you have to do this. So I want the people of South Dakota to be like, you have to do it. You know?
so we've had a couple of, like we had an early or late spring event and then we had the later event.
Yes, that's
Are both events covered?
The deadlines have passed for the earlier events, unless we're talking about economic injury, which is always pushed out 9 months from the date of declaration. So it is,
Was FEMA involved after that first one?
you know, I would really have to look it up specifically. So it depends on the county that you're in, and it depends. So, you know, ultimately, I always say to people they should actually make an official inquiry as opposed to whatever it is that I say. You know, so officially, I would want someone, if they were having damage, if they've had damage, to put it in an application, put the application in, and they will work it out. You know, I always tell people, stick with the truth, and, oh, we're having somebody. Stick with the truth, and it will work itself out. And George wants to add something, which I appreciate.
The early disaster was our number for that is 4440. Davidson County was not designated for that, so that would not be eligible for FEMA. But if there's a county close by, if it's contiguous and it was declared or designated, potentially SBA could help it for that.
That's exactly what I was trying to say. Thanks, George. I appreciate that. Yeah, because the economic injury disaster loans, they extend to any county that is touching a primary county. So, and in this regard, any county that's touching this county would be eligible for economic injury, even if it wasn't a declared county. So for this incident period, for this declaration, there are even opportunities for people into Minnesota and Nebraska and Iowa for economic injury for their business. I think that might
Any
be
other
it.
questions?
And I'll stick around if anyone has any other questions, if you think of any.
Thank you. Okay, Board of Adjustment, entertain a motion for the City Council to recess the City's Board of Adjustment. Motion by Mr. Rice, second by Mr. McCardle. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action to set the date for Board of Adjustment hearing 1/6/2020. Tamara and Mac Miller have applied for a conditional use permit to operate a family residential child care center. Property located at 206 Christine Street, legally describes Lot 2, Block 10, the Woods First Edition, City of Mitchell, Davis County, South Dakota. Property is zoned R4.
Move to set the date.
Motion by Mrs. Chark, second by Mr. Rice. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Hearing an action on Linda Christensen doing business as the Cat's Meow LLC, 701 South Sanborn Boulevard. Cat's Meow LLC, Linda Christensen applicant, Sanborn Rentals LLC owner, applied for conditional use permit to operate an animal hospital, clinic, boarding, shelter, training business at the property located at 701 South Sanborn Boulevard, legally describes Lot 1, Block 6, Van Epps First Edition, City of Mitchell, Davis County, South Dakota. It's zoned highway business.
Mayor and council members, the Planning Commission did hold a hearing on this request at their last regular meeting and did recommend unanimously to recommend approval. There was no conditions. And I see the applicant is here if you want to pose any questions to her.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Sabers. Further discussion?
What, and I wasn't at the meeting, obviously, but what was the comment about the parking lot and
Okay.
the boundary, or
What was
it's just paved over the boundary?
correct? What was discovered, this is, I'll have you correct me if I mistake. What happened is when I think they discovered that the parking lot that you can kind of see where it says 701, the property line is the fence.
Oh.
And so you can see that the asphalt parking lot encroaches onto the neighboring property line. And so, but I've understood that the potential buyer / applicant is aware of that, and so that was just brought to our attention.
Okay.
So they'll have to resolve that prior to the sale. The applicant hasn't purchased this yet, because the conditional use is contingent on it. But that was how they discovered the property, the issue, so. Am I correct? Yeah, okay.
So, yeah, we've had, I saw that one of the concerns that was expressed was over smell and things like that. So we have had some issues with cat houses over the past year. Could you address that a little bit, please?
This is going to be a place where we are going to keep overflow cats and dogs, or not dogs, I'm sorry, cats who come out of the pound, but we do not have either a foster home or we don't have another rescue to transfer them to. They will be enclosed in the building. They will have, each one will have a litter box, which will be cleaned a couple times a day. There was a fellow who lived a block away who said he had 2 cats and he knows cat litter smells. And I thought, well, okay, 2 cats, you must be doing something wrong. But there should be no smell, no issue. The cat litter, like I said, will be cleaned a couple times a day. It'll be dumped in the trash like just regular trash and hauled off.
Can you remind us how many cats you anticipate having at any given time?
It's kind of unknown right now. We have 5 foster families available, and we have all the cats that are in the pound and coming out are all have places to go. So it kind of depends on what comes in. We had 11 cats come in last week, which is highly unusual for this time of year. But we're going to be transferring 6 of them to Minnesota at the end of the month, and that'll take care of a bit of them.
And are you working in tandem at all with Mitchell Animal Rescue?
Yes. The gal who started Mitchell Animal Rescue is retiring. She's moving to the hills, and she's not going to be taking the overflow into her garage, which she has been doing for the last 10 years. She has a heated garage, and she piles up the cages in her garage and gives them a little bit of attention, food, water, changes the litter. I don't plan on doing that in my house. I don't have a heated garage, and I don't like the idea of them being in all these little cages and getting very little attention. I would rather have like little cat area rooms for cats to actually get along with each other and just play together and just have a little bit more freedom until they are transferred. So basically, I might have 1 cat, I might have 10 cats. They might be there for a week, they might be there for a couple of months. It kind of depends on how busy other rescues are. I've taken 18 cats down to Sioux City in the last month, and they've taken our overflow. We take them to Minnesota, and we take them to Fort Worth, Colorado, Fort Collins, Colorado. Yeah, and we have a couple other places. So as we get them, we contact other rescues, and when they have an opening, they take them. But kind of when cats slammed, everybody's slammed. So sometimes it takes a month or so.
Sorry, I have so many questions. How many can you accommodate, do you feel like? I mean, 18, wow, that seems like a lot. So how many can you accommodate at any given time?
Right now I have 7 little kittens in my basement bedroom, and they're like little tiny, and they're careening around, banging off the walls and playing, and there's no problem there. Like I said, it kind of depends on how many we have, how we're trying to go in the paper and go beyond Facebook to get people who would like to foster cats temporarily and people who want to adopt. Right now, they're doing everything through Facebook, and I'm telling them this, like, hey, our generation isn't on Facebook. They need to start reaching out to the community to tell everybody that, hey, we're here, these cats need homes, we need fosters to temporarily have them in their homes. We pay all the expenses. Just keep them for us for, anywhere from a week to a month or so, and we transfer them. So we've got probably 15 families that do that now, and we kind of rotate them around so not everybody's getting them all the time.
And how do you get paid?
We're all paid volunteers, yeah. Yeah. So this is just a building.
You said all the expenses are paid. Who is paying those expenses?
Mitchell Animal Rescue for the fosters. Before they come out of the pound, they're all spayed, neutered, have all their shots. They've had any medical issues taken care of. They go home with medicine if they come out of the pound with a problem. If they get a problem, then we take them back to the pound and get them treated. Most of the people pay for their own food and litter, but if they're low income or they want us to, we give them food and litter that we get. We do, like Menards has once a year they have a supply thing, and if not, we buy them from doing fundraising. Any other questions?
Anybody else wish to address this? Okay, we have a motion to approve and second. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Reconvene in City Council. Entertain a motion for the Board of Adjustment to adjourn City Council reconvene regular session. So moved. Second. Motion by Mr. Rice, second by Mr. Barrington. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Action to award 3-year quote for Park Hayland Project 2020-5. This is the bid we did not receive previous, correct? They can't hear you rattle.
Yes, this is the lease that we did not receive quotes on previously. We sent that out again. We received quotes from 3 different bidders. Carl Niehoff submitted the high quote of $1,532.70 for a total of $4,598.10 over the 3 years, and we do recommend approval for the lease.
Okay, thank you.
Move to approve the bid of Carl Niehoff.
Motion by Mr. Rice, second by Mr. McCardle. Further discussion? Is there anybody in the audience wishes to address this? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action on Resolution R 2019-95 dissolving tax increment District 13. Mrs. Baff, are you speaking to this?
This is the MTI housing TIF, which has now been paid off. So any remaining tax dollars that I have in the fund will be going back to the county to be redistributed to the taxing entities. And then in the future, it generates approximately $100,000 a year. That'll be back on the tax rolls.
I did pull up our TIF, countywide, or citywide TIF master book that we keep track of kind of what's going on. The TIF was created in 2010. This is the MTI one, correct? The city did do an amendment on that to basically implement the discretionary formula for a couple years, but as you can see now, the beginning value was $0 and it generated 3.719 million. So that's the value of the TIF at the end of its life. So, and like Michelle said, that increment goes back on the tax rolls, assessed value for next year.
More than likely you have this, and don't need it obviously right now, but can you put together the TIFs at some point that have rolled off and then just like they're of the tax increment that has rolled in at the point in time that we have abandoned or able to
I have that
close
right
it?
here. If
Oh,
you'd
you
like.
got it.
That's all of the.
So this is the equalized base of everything that we have record of, which is starting at this TIF here. The rest of them, we didn't have the original values on, but you can see this is where they started for the value, is the equalized base. So that was 33 million. And then here's the 2018, so we haven't got the most recent update yet, with 76. So the increment growth on these TIFs is 44,676,000. I don't track the increment after it goes on to the tax roll. I stop at the minute it goes back to full and true.
My point is, and I'm sure Stephanie has already anticipated, is look at what we've brought to the community if you want to argue against TIFs. And you can't miss the taxes if you don't have them originally, but it sure can entice businesses and development in your community if you utilize it and utilize it right. And so this is kind of neat. We're up to what, 22?
Well, we've had some come off too.
But I mean,
That we've
we've approved over the years. I can't remember the last TIF number that we did.
Your number is 23.
20?
Or 24.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, performance pets are not on here. Yep, okay.
Okay. But anyway, the point is we have caught a little bit of heat over the years of giving companies and so forth
You have one person in particular that's jumped on that.
right. But the thing about it is would have they invested in Mitchell if the TIFs weren't involved? We don't know the answer to that. And if it was no, right now we'd be sitting here with $44 million less in property taxes or property values. Property values. Yep.
And then just because somebody might be listening to the discussion, I think another important point is those last two TIFs that the city council approved, both Vantage Point and Performance Pet. The way we set them up was a grant. And so those also do not go against the city's indebtedness. Through our refinancing efforts that we've done with some of the existing TIFs and now some of these being paid off, we've lowered what that constitutional debt has been on those TIFs as well. So we're still using it as a good economic development incentive tool, but we're doing it in a way that we've also freed up some capacity for the city as well.
Move to approve resolution 2019-95 dissolution of TIF 13.
Okay. Motion by Mr. Rice. Second by Mr. Savers. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action on resolution R 2019-96 contingency transfer. Ms. Elwine.
Sure. I listed in the packet all of the individual contingency transfers, and we can go through those one at a time if you'd like. What the resolution does, I'm going to pull this up. The city council has approved in their annual budget one departmental budget that is contingency. We reserve that throughout the year for any unanticipated expenses or repairs that come up. That's also where we kind of designate if we think there's going to be a shortfall in sales tax revenue. So that's the way we maintain our structurally balanced budget, by ensuring that if we stay within what's in the contingency budget, you will not impact that. There were several items listed. I'm going to go through them on here because that has my description on each one. Unless council has any additional questions, we can go through those as well. Municipal buildings, we had some overtime, largely due to snow removal, and we also had some positions that were vacant, so then we had people that had to get scheduled to cover those shifts. Utility storage buildings, we had a couple different buildings that we were paying utilities out of in 19. One of them would have been Northwestern, that wouldn't have, the former Northwestern Public Service building, that now the city no longer has that, but we did not have that originally budgeted. We also have paid some utilities for Crafty Fox out of that budget as well.
And you have an extra zero on that. But
I see that right now, yeah. It is not 8.
yeah, I mean, we understand what it is. I just.
And I see
I
I spelled that wrong too. My apologies. Boy, I must have been having problems last week. We had some repairs to City Hall. We did have our AC units that we replaced in 2019. Some of those things we ended up having to add some additional, like another, I can't remember what you call it, the thing on the top, the split. We had an issue with a couple of the rooms that we had to make some changes that went above the original estimate. And then we also had the addition of the digital controls on those systems. We also added some extra in there because when we started up the heat this year, we found that there's at least 2 heaters that aren't working in the armory.
2 heaters in the armory gym need repair.
So if we get those done before the end of the year, those expenses will also come out in this year's budget. Public Works Administration, you can see that with fuel and gasoline. Other financing uses, this one's a little bit, I guess it's not really complicated, but the way that it works is we do transfer funds every year out of general fund into various funds. One of them is Park and Rec. They had a few items that came up this year that were unanticipated, and you'll see those farther down here. We had to do $28,000 for capital buildings, which is repairing 2 compressors at the ice arena. We had those rebuilt. We had a piece of equipment that died in the beginning of the year during one of our bad storms that we had to replace, and we replaced it with a Toolcat. We had an employee, we always budget group insurance based on what the employee enrolled in, so we had just a change from what an employee enrolled in after we did budget, so that was unanticipated. And then also for insurance, and the premium went up from what it had in previous years, and we think most of that was in the property coverage, and we think that was the addition of the pool. And then there were some other items that just either didn't have coverage or didn't have adequate levels. So that was those items. But because we had additional expenses coming out of Park and Rec, we needed to make sure there was enough cash in that fund to write the checks. So this $52,000 is cash that we're taking out of general fund into Park and Rec to make sure that they have enough cash to write that check. And by doing both of those out of contingency, again, we're ensuring that we're staying within the approved budget. The next one is $466,300 transfer to Corn Palace. The Corn Palace revenue budget is about $13,500 short, but the expenditure budgets the last time we looked were overspent by about $300,000. I need to point out that, these happened prior to even August. I think Michelle and I started adding about $275 to contingency starting the end of July, beginning of August. Or it was August, I guess. Yeah. So we've known that this was going to be over since then. I did list out some of the individual items that were over. I did receive a question from one of the council members about the entertainment. That's largely because we did, I'm saying the wrong name, Cornstalk Jam, yes, and we did realize quite a loss there. We also had quite a bit more spent in advertising above budget. And then the other thing is that we, at the end of 2019, this is 2019, so the end of 2018, we always have some expenses that occur in the next year. There were some expenses that were 2018 expenses that were written in 2019, so they basically used 2019 cash to pay some 2018 expenses. And then the only other 2 things I want to point out to council which I'm glad John asked the question earlier, because it made me look here. Our scissor lift did break earlier this year. That was $25,000 that and that's what they used for decorating. We had to replace that. We also had the basketball hoops. So we put the full $72,000 in there for the basketball hoops because we will write the check and they'll reimburse us. I realize that we might not need that full amount, right now in December. It's not going to be done, but they will need it next year, or next year the cash would be short. So if we get into the year and something magical happens and we don't think we need it, we wouldn't transfer it, but that just gives Michelle the budget authority to cover what we think the worst case scenario might be for the end of the year. And I did give you a history there of what the transfers out. As you can see, we're going to be, I can't remember, it was over $500,000 again this year on the transfers out. We did have it down quite a bit, but we've jumped up in the last 3 years again. So I did talk a little bit about park already. And then this one with community services, the JVCC, the roof replacement, they also had some damage due to water leaking in on a wall. We did have to make some repairs, and there will likely be an insurance check coming back, but with the roof cost being over and the repairs that were necessary, that budget will need a little assistance to make it through the end of the year. We do have a little bit left in that contingency fund. So if something unforeseen happens between now and the end of the year, we could still schedule a special council meeting to have you come in and consider action on that. Otherwise, if we end the year and we're okay, that's something that council could look at how you want to use for future. If you need to do something in 2020 that was cut or something like that because we didn't have the budget, you could consider allocating some of those unspent funds for 2020. Yeah, but we really won't have an overview of how much funds are available till probably February, because people are still submitting bills in January. So it'll be a month or two into the beginning of the year before we'll be able to report back to you on that. And I can answer any other questions that you might have. There was quite a few other items that council has discussed throughout the year that we didn't do the contingency. My thing won't turn over. Here we go. That we didn't do the contingency transfer because the overall budgets were okay. Yep. And just trying to be conservative. And really, with this transfers out to Corn Palace being so high, the thing that kind of saved us for that is this whole year I had kind of designated $250,000 for any shortfalls in sales tax. And since sales tax is coming in as projected, we didn't need that. So that's how we were able to still kind of maintain that structurally balanced budget. But Michelle and I went through these, 4 or 5 times. So I feel pretty comfortable with what we have now, as long as nobody goes and spends money on something that they weren't supposed to. So we should be good. Or nothing breaks, or major catastrophe.
I have one quick question. In between people telling me their recycling bins didn't shut, somebody called, they wanted to know, and I don't know, and I couldn't give them the answer. They wanted to know if we knew exactly how much corn stock we had to lose, and I said, I can't tell you that.
When I took over in August for that short time before we hired a director, I did do some of the calculation on what we had in expenses and in revenue. At that time, we were over $125,000 loss, and that's before we've been getting advertising bills in ever since then. So that's the bills that, as they stood as of right then, that's where we were at. It was not a profitable event for the city.
Is that where the advertising over budget came from?
The advertising over budget came from festival as well as Cornstalk Jam. We probably spent 3 times as much on festival advertising than we have in other years. We're still getting those bills. So.
That's being rethought too.
Yeah.
The way advertising is going to be done in the future.
Yep, and I think Doug had a really good package for Hairball where we contracted out. So they did the placement for us. That way we had a set budget going into it, and we knew what the expense was going to be at the end. It seemed to work really well, and our attendance was really good. I think we're going to continue to kind of follow that model so that we know what that final dollar number is, and we can plug that into the event budget right from the start.
Any updates, Mayor, with the hoops and the corn palace?
As far as when the work will be, I think it's going to have to wait until.
It's going to be in April.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
the
At this
closest.
point,
Joe
spring.
probably knows more, because I think Dave had to talk to you when I talked to Dave. And they looked at the schedule, and they have to put a scaffolding up, correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, and the scaffolding, you can't, if it's unsafe, you can't have a game going on with it, because it's over the soft seats.
I think they might have to move a couple seats too while they do it.
Yeah.
So at this point, it's late enough.
Was it in April, Joe?
That's correct. They actually had someone else come down and measure again. They plan to use a big boom lift, but they're planning they'll need 2 weeks of no one interfering with their work or any type of events happening on the floor for that work to happen.
Good thing is they'll be here for next year, but they're not going to get to use it this year.
How about the snow removal budget? Are we sitting okay there?
Yeah, actually, we still had, in your contingency budget, I had set aside $75,000 for snow removal costs, but we did not need that in any of the budgets. We had maybe that $3,000 for gasoline out of Public Works Engineering, might have been slightly from snow removal, but other ones we were able to make it work within the budgets.
You know, you just jinxed us, right?
Yeah, now we're going to get a blizzard next week, and I'm going to have to use more contingency.
Oh, don't say that.
Okay, I'll move approval of Resolution 2019-96 contingency transfer.
Okay, motion by Mr. Rice,
Second.
second by Mrs. Charks.
Thank you for explaining the items.
Further discussion? Is there anybody in the audience wishes to address these? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Action on Resolution R 2019-98, Foster Street Preservation BIG Bridge Improvement Grant application. Mr. Schrader.
Mr. Mayor, Council, this request is for approval to submit a South Dakota Bridge Preservation Improvement Grant application for the Foster Street Bridge, which spans over Dry Run Creek and BNSF Railroad. The improvements will be very similar to what happened on the Sanborn Bridge this past summer. It is set up for the work to be done so traffic can be maintained. Some of the major work includes bridge abutment improvements. They do believe there are possibly some voids under the sleeper slabs that they'll fix with this, and then they'll do an overlay similar to the Sanborn Bridge. Estimated costs for design and construction is $882,254.48, with additional $91,000 estimated for project oversight. That's a total of approximately $973,000, and the city's commitment is 20% or $194,644.29. The attached application is provided by Bros. The award of the grant will come in April of 2020, and we'll know then whether we can proceed or not. It'll be a 2021 budget item. If for some reason Bros can start with the design earlier, we possibly might look for some contingency funds just to get on top of things and possibly get a better bidding season if possible. Then we do recommend approval of the resolution.
And I think in previous grant applications, you can request funds even after they're spent.
That's correct.
I know that we've only had one other as a city and then one as a county. Are all communities as fortunate as we have been so far, and do you feel like it's likely that we'll get this grant?
I believe it's by a point process. It'll kind of depend who else is out there and who we're competing against. But if we don't succeed, we could obviously apply again in the future.
I would guess there will be a lot of big grants being asked for this year after the weather, so.
Okay, move approval to apply for the resolution of the big grant.
Motion by Mr. Rice. Second by Mr. McCardle. Further discussion? Is there anybody in the audience wishes to address this? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Second reading of ordinance O 2019-27 supplemental appropriations.
We had the first reading last week, last meeting, nothing has changed from the first reading. We have two items that we're asking for supplemental appropriations for. Again, these are not part of the contingency process, so the reason why these are going through supplemental appropriation is the city would be, in at least this top one, the nuisance abatement, the city would be fronting the expense with repayment coming back through the nuisance abatement process. Part of that is for the demolition on First and Main, and then the other part is for the property at Havens and Foster. And that one will determine we won't know if it's going to be needed until we see how much progress was made by the owner. So again, those two would be ones that would come back to the city, but we would be fronting the cost. The second one there on the 911 funds, that's, we had some repair work that had to be done to a communication tower, and we're taking that out of 911 fund reserves instead of using general fund money for that, since it's a capital improvement for dispatch purposes.
And Stephanie, didn't you say that was a result of storm damage you might be covered by insurance?
Actually, what we talked about that, and I think the damage was, our deductible is so high that the damage doesn't have enough to, the difference
Right.
is not enough to make it make sense to apply for this.
I think our deductible's $5,000 and it was.
They were
the cost of
$7,000 apiece.
Yeah, didn't pay to it. And Mrs. Kelly was looking at the possibility of reducing our deductible on those items, those lower priced items that run the risk of storm damage.
And then the other item is replacing the AC unit that's on their server room that controls all their dispatch equipment.
Move to approve on second reading.
Okay, motion by Mrs. Charles. Second by Mr. Barrington. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address these? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Motion to adopt.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mr. Rice, second by Mr. Smith. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address? Roll call, please.
Dosher. McCardle. Barrington. Charts.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Sabers. Rice.
Aye.
Motion carries. Second reading of ordinance O 2019-28, ride service company insurance requirements, fees, and fines. Mr. Johnson, you want to speak any further to this?
I don't have any updates since the first reading, so unless there's any questions.
This
Move-
changed the liability
Yep.
insurance.
Move to approve 2019-28.
Motion by Mr. Rice, second by Mr. Sabers. Further discussion? If anybody in the audience wishes to address this? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Motion to adopt. Motion by Mrs. Charles.
Second.
Second by Mr. Sabers. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
McCardle.
Aye.
Barrington. Charts.
Aye.
Smith. Sabers. Rice.
Aye.
Dosher.
Motion carries. Action to approve Resolution R 2019-97, resolution authorizing the application for financial assistance, authorizing the execution and submittal of the application, and designating an authorized representative to certify and sign payment requests.
Mayor and council members, this resolution will authorize the city to apply for SRF, the State Revolving Loan Fund financing for Phase 2 of East Central Drainage Project. The total amount is $4.6 million, well, you can see $4,618,000. Of that, $4.2 million is for the Phase 2 construction. The other $418,000 is for non-point source measures to the South Dakota Board of Water and Natural Resources. Basically, that's the grant funds that we've been applying for work to be done in the Lake Mitchell watershed. For anyone that was not part of the hearing or didn't hear the discussion on the previous SRF applications, the way they accomplish that grant is if you're applying for the grant for the non-point source, they give you a lower interest rate, but you pay the same payment you would either way. And instead of it going to interest, the state takes that and gives it to DENR for the grant program. So for the city, we don't see a difference either way, but it does provide funding for that Lake Mitchell watershed improvement. We do have Phase 2 completely or fully budgeted in the 2020 expenditure budget, but it also anticipates that we're going to be getting this financing. I believe that Joe, maybe you remember, I believe the date of the application is in January that we have to apply by?
That's correct.
Yeah. So once we hear back from the board whether or not the financing is approved, if the financing is approved, then we will move forward with dissolving the TIF in the Clockworks area. And we need to do that, or else we would have two different debt associated for the same project. So because we are pledging our payment source being the sewer fund or the water and sewer fund, it will go into the 10% debt capacity. We won't need that TIF debt because we're going to use our revenue streams from the utility accounts to pay that debt service back. I just have not done that yet because I want to make sure this financing comes through. We had about 2.1 anticipated in the TIF, and that was if it was completely built out as anticipated. So we are, as a city, obviously better off getting the SRF financing if possible. Also, then we have the ability to have some more grant funds in the watershed for that work. If there's any questions, I can sure answer those, but this is a time for anyone in the public as well, if they have any concerns with the application, to bring those concerns to council for consideration.
This will also help with the flooding issues that we saw over
Yeah, and
September 11th.
just for the general public's information, phase one basically has the end of the outflow pipe, and now phase two will connect the rest of the drainage basin to the new pipe in addition to what's there, and they'll have better water removal.
Move approval of 2019-97.
Motion by Mr. Rice. Second by Mrs. Charles. Further discussion. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to address this? Okay. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. We're adjourned.